Welcome back, JJ Hawk fans, and thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast. Today we're going to dive into something that's not quite a secret, but, we haven't really explained it. So it is no secret that JJ Hawk and Dark Dialogue have partnered together. But what is new, and what has never been done before, is this. This is a new kind of collaboration, the first of its kind. Never before has a band collaborated with a true crime podcast. Not in this way. Not for promotion, not for hype, and not for trend, but for healing. At first glance, music and true crime might seem like two completely different worlds. One has melody, the other is mystery, one has rhythm, and one is like reality. But when you look closer, they share something powerful. Both are rooted in emotion. Both search for truth. Both try to make sense of pain. And that's where the partnership was born. What works about the JJ Hawk Band and Dark Dialogue isn't creativity, it's intention. Both platforms want the same thing: to heal, to help, to find answers, to give voice to stories that deserve to be heard. True crime is heavy, it's layered, it's emotional. And music, when it's raw, honest and raw, doesn't shy away from the weight. It carries it. Sometimes emotions run deep in the stories of Dark Dialogue tells. Sometimes they're uncomfortable. Sometimes they leave questions behind. But honesty is what makes it work. Raw content is what makes it real. And real is what connects us all. What you're about to listen to is something different. Dark Dialogue takes music provided by the JJ Hawk Band and weaves it into powerful, emotional victim tributes. Not as background noise, not as filler, but as a living, breathing part of the story. The music becomes the emotion behind the words, the heartbeat behind the narrative, the space where grief can breathe. These tributes are about remembering, about honoring, and ensuring victims are more than headlines. The people, the lives, the stories, that's what mattered. And together, through storytelling and sound, we are creating something meant to resonate long after the episode has ended. It isn't just collaboration, it's connection. It's storytelling with intention. It's two creative worlds meeting in the middle, not to sensationalize, but to humanize. So as you listen, pay attention to the music, feel the tone, notice the way it moves with the story. Because this is more than just a podcast episode. It's a tribute. Now we invite you to sit with us, to slow down, to reflect, and to remember. Just as we play this victim tribute, created through the music of the JJ Hawk Band and the storytelling of Dark Dialogue. Listen with your heart.
The honest answer is this. We do not know whether the number is 1 more, or 10 more, or 20, or 50, and we're probably never going to know. And that uncertainty is its own kind of violence, because every unidentified woman found near an interstate during those years becomes a question mark. Every missing hitchhiker along I-10, I-15, I-80 becomes a question. Every face in a photograph that investigators couldn't immediately match becomes a question. And questions don't get victim tributes. Names do. That's why we're going to widen the lens in this tribute. Patricia Waltz and Douglas Iskowski will always be the center of this arc. Regina K. Walters will always be central to understanding the pattern, but they are not the only ones touched by this man. There are survivors whose stories never became headlines. There are families who may never get a courtroom admission. There are victims who exist only as case numbers, skeletal remains, or missing posters curling on old corkboards. We cannot prove them in court, but we can acknowledge them in truth, because justice is not only about what can be indicted, it's also about what can be recognized. And recognition matters. Even when the system cannot assign a case number, even when there is no trial, even when the file sits in a rural evidence room waiting for a name. So when we move into this tribute, it will not be limited to the legally proven. It will honor the known, and it will leave space for the unknown. For the women who survived and never spoke again. For the ones who were photographed and identified years later. For the ones who may still be out there, unnamed, waiting for someone to connect the right dots. Because if this case teaches us anything, it's this. Proof is a legal threshold. Victimhood is not. And the map of harm in this story is larger than any courtroom could ever fully contain. So before we begin this victim tribute, we need to slow the pace like we always do. Stories like this move quickly once the system catches up. Indictments, pleas, sentencing, finality. But remembrance doesn't move at the speed of court calendars. It asks something quieter of us. This moment is not about legal outcomes. It's not about investigative theory. It is not about body counts or sentencing debates. It is about people. Patricia Walsh and Douglas Ziskowski were not chapters in a serial offender's timeline. They were not a case. They were a married couple at the beginning of their life together, traveling with purpose, anchored in faith, believing the road ahead was something to be embraced, not feared. Their story did not begin on an interstate shoulder. It began long before that, in families, in friendships, in conviction, in hope, and it deserves to be remembered in that fuller light. In this episode, we're also going to widen that circle, because while Patricia and Douglas are the names that we can honor with certainty, we know they were not alone in the harm that radiated outward from this sorry son of a bitch. There are survivors whose strength kept them alive. There are victims whose names never made it into an indictment. There are faces once captured in photographs that took years to identify. There may be others still unnamed. This tribute holds space for all of them. As part of that remembrance, we continue our collaboration with the J.J. Hawk Band, whose music accompanies these victim tributes across the series. Their work, produced through Hawk Studios, is not meant to dramatize the story or to interpret it. It's meant to create room, a steady, respectful backdrop against which we can remember without intrusion. The song you're about to hear is called Point of No Return. It reflects that irreversible moment when a path is altered, not as spectacle, but as quiet finality, a recognition that something sacred has been taken and cannot be restored to what it once was. As the music plays beneath this tribute, we ask you to listen gently, not for legal conclusions, not for investigative insight, but for the lives that existed before the case, and for the futures that should have been allowed to unfold. This is Point of No Return by the J.J. Hawk Band. And this is Patricia Walsh and Douglas Ziskowski. As the music continues beneath us, this final tribute widens. It begins where the court record ends. Patricia Candy Walsh Ziskowski, Douglas Scott Ziskowski, Regina K. Walters. 3 names entered into judgments. 3 names attached to life sentences. 3 lives the legal system can say with certainty were taken by the same man. Patricia was 24 years old, a woman of conviction, a newlywed stepping into adulthood with belief, with direction, with the kind of quiet faith that makes you assume the world will meet you halfway. She was traveling beside her husband, not chasing recklessness, not inviting harm, simply moving forward. Her story did not begin on a highway shoulder. It began years earlier, in classrooms, in friendships, in family kitchens, in church pews, in laughter that had nothing to do with danger. Douglas was 28, a husband, a son, a man who believed he could navigate risk and protect the person beside him. When he stood on the side of that road, he did not stand as a statistic. He stood as someone with plans, a future measured in decades, not in minutes. His life was not defined by where he was left. It was defined by who he was before that moment. Regina was 14, a child, 14 years old enough to believe that she could start over somewhere else, and too young to understand what kind of predator moves through truck stops and highways. Her final photograph is the one people recognize, but it is not the whole of her. Before that barn, she was a daughter, a girl with friends, a person with a voice and a personality and a future that stretched far beyond one catastrophic encounter. 3 confirmed murders, but this tribute does not stop at 3 because no one builds a chamber like that for a single experiment. No one refines cruelty over 15 years and leaves only 3 victims in their wake. Violence that methodical, that engineered, that rehearsed, it accumulates. We know there were survivors. The woman found chained in Arizona, terrified, brutalized, but alive. The woman in Houston who escaped when a handcuff wasn't secured. Others who may have walked away and never reported. Others who reported and were not believed. Others who survived and chose silence because survival itself required it. Their lives are part of this story too. And then there are the unnamed. The women in photographs seized from an apartment and a truck. Faces frozen in fear. Some later identified as survivors, others never located. Some who may still be out there, living quietly with memories they never asked to carry. Some who may not have survived at all. There are unidentified remains found near highways that fit patterns but never fit a courtroom narrative. There are missing persons along interstate corridors whose files sit in drawers and databases without a confirmed link. There are families who still wonder whether a long-haul truck driver passed through their daughter's last known location. We don't know the number. It may be 1 more, it may be 10, 20, 50, but absence of indictment does not equal absence of harm. What we know from behavior, from engineering, from pattern, from time, is that this violence did not occur in isolation. It unfolded across years and states, across thousands of miles of asphalt. It intersected with lives that we can name and lives that we can't. So this final tribute expands beyond the legal boundary of conviction. It honors Patricia and Douglas, whose love story was interrupted but not erased. It honors Regina, whose name was restored after she was once labeled only as Jane Doe. It honors Ricky Lee Jones, whose death is nearly certain, though never formally adjudicated in court. It honors the Arizona survivor who endured torture and told investigators what she saw. It honors the Houston survivor who escaped a chain that was meant to end her life. It honors every unidentified woman whose image was recovered from a box of photographs and still sits waiting for a name. It honors every family whose missing person report never intersected with the right database at the right time. It honors the possibility, the near certainty that there are graves that we do not know about and stories we will never fully reconstruct. Because this story is not about the offender's mythology. It is not about the architecture of his cruelty. It is not about the interstate map that he used as camouflage. It is about human beings who existed long before he entered their lives. Patricia had a childhood. Douglas had dreams. Regina had a laugh and favorite songs and ordinary teenage moments that deserved to multiply into adulthood. The unnamed had birthdays. The survivors had futures they had to rebuild from trauma. None of them were chapters in a serial narrative. They were people. And if there are more, and there are, then they deserve space in this tribute too. Not because we can list them, And not because we can prosecute their cases, but because acknowledging them matters. The system can only convict what it can prove, but remembrance is not limited to indictments. So, as Point of No Return continues to play beneath this final tribute stands for all of them. For the 3 whose names are written into court records, for the one whose death was almost certainly his, even if never charged, for the survivors who lived, for the unidentified who wait, for the missing whose families still search. You are not numbers attached to a speculative body count. You are not footnotes in a highway map. You are not evidence tags in a property room. You are remembered. Patricia, Douglas, Regina, and to every victim, known, suspected, unnamed, and still undiscovered, you are not forgotten. If the cost is everything, I'm not lost.
As we end this episode, I want to take a moment to reflect on how this collaboration works and how meaningful and necessary it is to create victim tributes. This is a partnership unlike anything that's come before. A band and a true crime podcast join forces, not to entertain, not to shock, but to humanize stories that matter. J.J. Hawk's music brings raw emotion, rhythm, and soul, while Dark Dialogue's storytelling carries truth, reflection, and reverence. Together, they create something entirely new, a space where grief, memory, and empathy meet, where listeners can feel and understand in a way that's both powerful and necessary. These tributes remind us that behind every story is a person, a life, a voice that deserves to be heard. And through this collaboration, we can see how art and narrative can connect, heal, and resonate long after an episode ends. In a world that can feel heavy and isolating, it's more important than ever to reach out, to offer love and understanding, and stay connected with those around you. We need each other, friends, family, and community, to share our hearts, to listen, and to be present. These connections are what make life meaningful, and they remind us that no one has to face their struggles alone. In this episode, we showed you how music and storytelling can come together and create something meaningful. If this moved you, hold on to that feeling. Share it with friends, family, or anyone you think might need to hear it. You never know who it might touch. And remember, never be afraid to reach out to someone. You're never alone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for honoring these stories with us. Until next time, this has been a collaboration between Dark Dialogue and the J.J. Hawk Band, where music and storytelling meet to remember, reflect, and resonate. As always, love to all. 07, peace, and stay happy and healthy. May your heart always find the light and connection.